So that mindset is really going to be what carries you more than anything else. It's that genuine interest that you have in the other person, in understanding who they are, why they do the things that they do, what is going on inside of their head, that is going to inform the questions that you ask them, that's going to dictate the way that your face looks, that's going to change the inflection from one that's accusatory to one that is genuinely curious. So all that said, I don't want to give you too many techniques to layer on top, but there are a handful of tips that can help carry you. The first one is that it's oftentimes helpful when you're listening to see to the degree to which you can repeat what somebody said to you back to them, especially if you're having a hard time understanding what it is that they've said. Now, there's short little ways of doing this, and I see this from Oprah Winfrey all the time. Somebody will say a sentence, right? They'll just say, and that was when my dad left, and it left me just absolutely heartbroken. And she will just kind of say the last three words back to them. She'll be, it left you heartbroken. And if you watch, I can pull up clips, and I will, in fact, for the breakdowns in this module. She does this all the time. It's just become habit for her to repeat the last few words. And while this might seem small, you can play around with this. This absolutely does make the other person feel heard. A deeper version of this is when someone is telling you a complicated series of reasonings and stories, and you're trying to piece together all these things. You can say, hold on, do I have this right? You were thinking, and then fill in the blank until they say yes. Nailed it. When you've done that, you have built a bridge. Not only have you gotten what they've said, but you've shown them that you are invested in doing the work that it takes to truly understand them. And that means a lot. Another tip is to realize that when people do start to open up, and oftentimes you might have to be the one who gets vulnerable first. That's why we talked about our values in the previous video. But when people share things with you, there's a moment of high sensitivity where they're going to be looking at you to see if the judgment is coming. And they're going to be reading your body language, your tonality, the next question you ask. So when somebody opens up, they're very much willing to retreat if what they confront is judgment. So these are the times when you want to lower the judgment the most. And you might not intend to, but you can come across as judgy with a handful of things. First off, why versus what? Now, I know we said that we want to drive down into the why, and that is a good way to think about it. But if you're not careful with your inflection and your tonality, saying why can sound accusatory. So if somebody says that they did something they're not proud of, that they stole money, you could say, well, why did you do that? And that can sound a little bit accusatory. Now, you could say, so instead, you could say, so what was going through your mind when that happened? Again, a small thing. You don't need to shy away from why all of the time, but it's just one of those things that in those moments that are hyper sensitive, what instead of why can make the difference between the person retreating or not. The last tip that is incredibly helpful when you're in a group is to notice. Oftentimes you'll see that there are people in groups that have a very easy time speaking up and people that struggle. You may have been one of those people that struggle, and hopefully this course is helping you to share a little bit more. But not everybody has this. So when you're in a group and you notice that somebody hasn't shared in a while, ask them for their opinion. Involve them. Say, well, what do you think? Oftentimes that person is thinking, there's a lot going on inside their head, and they don't know how to cut in. When you do that, you're not only showing that you're a good conversational leader, you're making quite an impression on that person. And while they're not probably the type that is going to speak up and tell you how much it means to them, trust me, it does. And if you're like an introvert like me, you know that that can mean very much to you. So those tips are to get you started. But again, I have to reiterate, this is big for the empathetic type. This is all about your desire to understand why other people do what they do, what makes them tick. And part of the thing that helps me connect with that is that in understanding other people, I feel like I understand myself, because the drivers that drive many people, whether I recognize it immediately or not, are inside me too. So part of what drives me when I'm asking people questions is that I can relate to their core things. Whether we're talking about that stuff that's up on the leaves, I can't always relate to it. But when I am driving down to why they did what they did, what was the conflict that they felt? Did they make the decision that they're proud of? How did they handle that afterwards? These are things that inform my own life. It helps me become more self-aware as I understand other people, and it helps me to drive and be genuinely interested in these types of conversations. So that is it for now. Let's hop right into the action guide.